other things, but also when it comes to the arts, they are literally the soul of any science. I actually believe that because I'm a believer in sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah.
Right, so let me tell you, we're going to have this talk.
Jeff Bezos did, right?
Jeff Bezos said that as well.
And maybe
I'm going to verify that with ChatGPT, but apparently he's
Stephen Jobs.
Steve Jobs, I believe he could have said something like that.
He do it actually. You know the Mac. They were
Then again,
more
Jeff
beautiful
Bezos
than
has launched cartoons on Amazon Prime. So, interesting. So we're going to have this talk, and then I would like to speak to just the students, and I'm going to request that all the lecturers please leave the room afterwards. We're going to have a talk, one-to-one. All right? Okay. So, Ayesha, thank you so much. Ayesha has been with us now for just over 2 years. She's a fusion tech artist. She joined the Metavisionaries as part of the original group that set this up. She's also a creative director. So let's enjoy this presentation. It's going to give you a different take, and then we'll take it from there. So let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Wasim. And yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here. In fact, here in Chaos, because I think this presentation actually requires us to sit here. And this presentation, I think one thing that while you're just absorbing a lot of ideas, there's going to be new ideas, there's going to be new approaches. So just keep an open mind, because although you some of you guys won't be in arts, it's a separate field. But I think creative thinking, design thinking is somehow related to every field. And that's the kind of approach that I want all the students especially to have while you're thinking about your payload. So I just wanted to say that before we started. And I think that changes your perception, how you're absorbing the information. So yeah, I just wanted to say that out loud. And I'm a fusion tech artist. Usually, people say that they're visual artists. But there's a story behind. I used to start using the word fusion because I was having a hard time explaining myself to people outside the art community what I do. And I started saying that I'm a fusion tech artist. Eventually, people started understanding me more. Yet, in the start, people said that there is no such thing as fusion. But after 2 years of using the word fusion, I can proudly say that I'm part of a group which now associate to the term called fusion arts, right? So I think that's the power of individuality, and that's the power of having your own niche, having your own set ideas, and knowing what you want to do with your life, right? So the topic today is innovative AI and space applications, and the two case studies that I will be briefly sharing with you is one, spacesuit design, and second is identity in space. And we all know, like a lot of Saudis here, and you guys have a very specific way of dressing. You guys have a very specific way of looking at things, right? And there's an individuality of it, and there's a beauty in it. So the question I want to ask all of you, and that's how I wanted to start, is when we think about space and when we think about arts, is it the adaptation? Is it the change that we're trying to address? Or whether we just want to talk about whether the space industry exists, right? That's a huge question that we all want to ask. And also space accessibility, the scientists in the room have already answered that, so I would not speak too much about it, but also careers in AI/art, right? That's something that we would address. And I will come back to this question because this will give you guys a lot of ideas on how to add maybe bits of visual art, bits of colors in your works, right? So that's the idea. Some of the ideas within the presentation will include one, light pollution. How many of you guys are familiar with the term light pollution? Okay, a good number. Light pollution, okay. Active materials for spacesuits and biosuits. We will be going over overview effect and imaginative arts. We will be going over design for space and well-being, use of AI and emotion mapping. So it's not just the AI, it's the use of AI with emotion mapping. That's like a completely new field of merging together AI with and we all are human, so emotion is what makes us, right? And emotion mapping is a new field, so I would want to talk a bit about that. And then simulation and metaverse. As we all know, we already have a spaceship, and we do a bunch of exciting events in our metaverse. So that's something that I would address, and then integrate 3D rendering, 3D printing. I'm sure we have some of those facilities here in labs, so that would be interesting to look into. And in the end, we will go over the space and art fusion visualizations, because visualization is something that makes your thoughts a reality, right? Like things are in your head and they don't make sense, but suddenly when you place them on a piece of paper or you use AI to generate those, so it makes more sense, right? So that's the idea. And these are the 3 case studies that we will be looking over, like I said, machine learning, materials, and the meaning of spacesuits and biosuits, and third is the light pollution. And the key approaches for this entire presentation and how I've designed are 1, exploring the new avenues with fusion approach. Second is the challenging process of art making with artificial intelligence and machine learning. And the third is impact across the multiple fields. So it's not just the art. We will be talking about how to include creativity and imagination, the role of imagination, with let's say healthcare, let's say engineering, let's say mathematics, history, right? So all of these things are in connection, they're not in a bubble. So another question that we want to ask ourselves before we move towards art is how to navigate this next decade, right? What is the future of careers and innovation, and how will innovators adapt and collaborate with the space environment actively and passively, right? So that's a question that we all have to ask ourselves while we're thinking about any kind of idea. It doesn't have to be a payload, right? It can be an any idea. Okay, so yeah, these are some of my pieces that got featured on Forbes. So you can see these are biosuits, in fact. And the interesting thing about this is that it was made using AI, but it was done when AI was not even there, right? I was using custom APIs in 2018 to make this. And I remember like logging into ChatGPT and logging into some softwares that I was finding it very hard to access it because I was part of a group and I was fortunate enough. So they gave me these custom APIs and I was like super excited to see what the potential of AI would be. So these were done then, and you can see like even today, I mean this still stands like it has its own value, but we've come so far now. So I just wanted to add that here because this is how my journey kind of started into fusing the tech with art. Another idea that we have to think about is sustainability in design. And one way to do this is reinterpretation of space tourism and colonization, because we talk about space exploration, but then how do we colonize and create a community? Because it's not just one solo person. I mean, the movies we see is usually just one character having all the fun and the movies around that. But what if the communities start going up and we think about the sense of community, we think about the sense of colonization, and how do we start visualizing those ideas as well? And obviously, whatever you see on the screen, these are all just my artworks. I'm thinking about different ideas, I'm thinking about different identities. On the left, there is this artwork of an Indian woman in space with the rover that you see. And obviously something inspired by Arabic culture. I'm using bits of machine learning here. And then obviously you can see like influence of metaverse. So, I think visuals have such a power, and when we speak with a visual, it's just much more impactful, right? So that's what I usually do when I'm, when I'm making all of these artworks. Again, I won't go, much in detail regarding each artwork, but you can sense like where the influence is coming from. Like something on the right is from Egyptian influence, but it's an African work of art. It's looking at African culture and their use of gold. But I wanted to show, how they have been contemporizing and how they are thinking about space in the actual setting of space. So a bit of the work that how I'm doing it requires softwares, but at the same time I'm using data collection for this. And I'll, once we move further, I'll explain how I do that. So this here actually represents Saudi culture. There's a hijab, there's space behind it, and I always find it very beautiful when we take some facts and we take some inspiration from cultures and we build like works of art around it. Something very scientific. This is from my another project, which is just about space suits and how the living materials can be added within our wearables that can survive on different exoplanets. Now this is a very interesting idea because we are all thinking about payload design and how can wearable art that we can actually wear, but it is also functional at the same time. So that's like a coming together of science, art, technology, all of that. And also we have to think about being cultural spacelings. At the moment we are earthlings, but how would we be as cultural spacelings? That's how I like to say it. But locomotion and identity for spacefarers and spacelings is also a topic within my study that I look at, how we will be moving, what are the customs, what are the cultures, while making those artworks, because like I said, visuals have a power, and if we are making something, then it has to come from a concept, it has to come from science in my case, it can't be just something out of random. So something we made for during FIFA World Cup last year. So these are the renderings of showing Qatar culture in a much more futuristic settings, as you can see. Like, so there's a stadium, and FIFA World Cup coming out of it, and we're thinking about if maybe we would be like there will be a point when we will be like this. That's how I imagine a lot of surreal ideas coming together. So on the left you see a Turkish painting. It's actually 6 years back when I did this, but it's in Hagia Sophia Mosque, and I kind of visualize that into space. And on the right you see a James Webb Space Telescope painting. It was actually my first collaboration with Wasim and Dr. Tara as well, because I think Dr. Tara gave the voiceover for this, and we actually created this work of art when James Webb Space Telescope was actually launching. And in this image you see the journey of the prototype of the James Webb Space Telescope and how it went to space. So it's not just about all the great things that the telescope does, but it talks about the journey or the motivation behind, or maybe you can say the hard work that the team put in. So I wanted to give a tribute to that, right? So this artwork represents, you can see like a AI bot on the left side, and a person who is just exploring the sky and is just laying down. So this is my visualization, you can say, of how that journey looks like in my head. Okay. So more of the spacesuits coming in. Yes, so what is space and the role of AI in near future? So these are the two questions I always ask myself. That's why I've added them while I'm constructing any form of visual. And AI to innovate. Okay, so another thing I want to really talk about is when we say AI art, people just enter a command and they think that they've become artists. Okay, so they think that they are now artists, which is fine. That is just one way of expressing, and you can say that you are an AI artist. But I would actually like to challenge everyone, and this is something that I think how we should think about AI is that AI is also a tool. And what would happen if we start generating ideas just to help us create even bigger projects? And I will actually give you an example to tell you how I've used this methodology, you can say research methodology, to construct a project which is around light pollution. So it's just coming up. So examples will include how do we bridge healthcare, how do we bridge the scientific experiments, and also data visualizations. And data visualizations is different from data collection, but at the same point they're both connected, because if someone is collecting the data, then it's as much important that we visualize that data so that it makes more sense and we are able to understand the data that we're collecting in a much more better way. And that can only happen if we approach it with an interdisciplinary approach. So that's what I added here. And also when we're thinking about consuming all the images, so we all consume like 100 images a day, right? We can't just help it. We are surrounded by images. So it's all about how conscious you are of the things that you are consuming. And I think John highlighted this yesterday with his amazing presentation, that how the brain is absorbing a lot of things, and it's thinking, and there's like conscious part of it, there's mind. So this slide is actually relevant to that, and it's connecting to that, because if you're doing conscious consumption of information, then we know what kind of ideas we want to construct, and how does that link into whatever we are doing. So it doesn't have to be just art, right? And 3 things why I think art is important in my view is to reinterpret, it's to educate, and to impact. These are the 3 things that I think about whenever I'm doing space art or any other kinds of art. And this is actually the picture of my very first Miro board. So I just wanted to add it here. You can see like crazy, like a lot of ideas in utopia versus dystopia. I still go back to this Miro board because there's a lot of futuristic sci-fi ideas that I I'll go with. And you know, I have a few friends, so that always helps, having a community and sharing your ideas with like-minded people. This is the project that was the result of the Miro board that you just saw, by the way. So this is the power of Miro board. Here, what you see on the lower right side is a color wheel, and that color wheel is by a scientist called Plutchik. So Plutchik was the scientist who came up with the emotions and colors. You know, he represented the emotions and colors for the first time. And I think that's quite interesting because even up to today, we trace back the origin of some ideas and emotion mapping. So I actually got inspired by that, and using some of the data sets that you see here, these are the data sets. So I had like, I think hundreds of such collections of small images, and they were taken from Instagram and Twitter 6 years back. And you know, I was looking at how people are talking about emotions on social media. Like, you know, people use hashtag happy, hashtag sad. And I actually saw trends of color, like how, you know, it says joy is yellow and anger is red, you know. So I saw some trends which is quite interesting. It tells you how people today are thinking about colors, and they're conceiving information and they're responding back to it. And then what I did was I turned each of the colors from this wheel into a robot. It was like a robotic fashion, and you see this was a happy board, this was sad one, this was anger, this is anticipation and disgust. And then what we did was that it was integrated with Zoom. So Zoom was actually the most popular app during COVID times. So what
green is good, by the way. I just thought it was
So we integrated it with Zoom, and what people could do was, and it also had an algorithm, by the way. So this is the interesting part. It had code. Whoever is interested in like engineering and code, this is relevant to them. So when people actually saw themselves on Zoom, the code could tell whether you are 40% sad and 50% happy, or you had like 10% anger in you, which you can question whether it's right or wrong, but I'm just talking about the potential of including the art with the code, right? And I remember there was such a funny meeting that we were all just seeing each other and telling that who is sad and who is angry. And at the end of the day, we also had this feature that people could actually put a filter of these characters that you see in front of you, and it was like a character that they became. So making Zoom fun, right? Through a color psychology and through emotion mapping. This was the project. This is like in detail, you can see how I was coming up with the ideas. This is the wheel. So this is like the project that I'm currently working on, and it's also addressing the idea of cultures in space, and it's an ongoing project called Shared Space. So that addresses that how human beings would have different cultures in space and how we will live in harmony. Because obviously it can't be just, I like the images of space that we usually get, but I feel like this is just the start. We need to innovate it to the level that we can say that, oh, whatever is not happening on Earth, maybe we can make space a better place, and that's why I call it shared space. And this is actually one of the images that brings together the colors of truck art, which is from South Asian culture, and it represents neon colors, it represents embroidery, it represents local craft, but in a way that it's integrated in the wearables, so like, astronauts outfit, right? So that's something that I'm currently looking at. Another project that I did, which I think addresses the idea of sustainability, is Dark Skies Gaze Back. Like the dark skies are gazing back at you, because I feel like there's a consciousness beyond us. Again, going back to the ideas that John discussed, I think there's a consciousness that's beyond us, but also us. So there's like a connection. And in order to talk about it, I created these outfits that talk about the light pollution and the dark skies awareness. So it was all done through sustainable fashion and recycling and upcycling of materials that I had in my studio. So I just went super crazy with it. Yeah, these are just like some iterations of me developing it. And in the center, what you see is images that were done through LiDAR technology. Like, do you guys know what LiDAR is? No? So in your iPhones now you have this app through which you don't even have to do 3D rendering from start, but you can actually just take like around an object, and you can create a 3D version of it. Then you can take it to the softwares, and then you can build on top of it. So I actually used this technology in 3 years back, and I was working with utensils from kitchen. because it was COVID and I couldn't go out. So whatever I had, I ended up making like costumes with it. So the utensils from my kitchen became an inspiration, and I was using the LiDAR technology to kind of document it. And the idea was to talk about the light pollution, but then also the stereotypes around genders, of around what is possible for one person and not possible for the other. So the pollution word became like the highlight of my project. It's not just the light. And this image. So these two images that you see on the sides, these are all constructed by the way, utensils, kitchen utensils. You can't tell, but it is constructed by it. And almost like, you see these women in brown color because it represents the culture where I'm from. Secondly, they almost became these warriors, right? So it's kind of subverting the narrative of what women can do. Because, being in a kitchen, it says that women are supposed to be in the kitchen, doing this and that. So again, bringing together identity politics, but then also bringing together light pollution idea, because the color scheme that you see here, and because these were photographs, I was thinking about the effects of light as well, not just light pollution. So they were taken in like sepia tones and like monochromatic tones. Yeah. So again, bringing together different disciplines, this is like one of that example. And on the left, by the way, this is an example of an artwork project that I did. It documents tumor cells in different kinds of lights and stains from my studio, and images that I was working with a scientist, local scientist, and they gave me some archival stuff. And I overlapped those images on a person that had that cancer, right? So what this image does is it's so colorful. You can't tell this in this image that this person is affected, but at the same time it's a striking visual. And this became a poster that is now in their hospital. But the point is that it doesn't have to be black and white or very bland for people who are experiencing such thing. It can be quite colorful for them. Again, a bit of more iterations, and these are the other body of work from my same exhibition. Yeah. So and the next idea is overview effect. So when we are in space, and a lot of astronauts talk about it, that they see the entire Earth as a blue dot, right? So it's like the sense of community, sense of togetherness, and again with my art I want to promote the same thing, that we are all together and we want to achieve something together in space. It's not just one culture. Another idea that will be interesting for a lot of science students here is 3D printing and wellness in space, right? So we are talking about health and wellness in space. So a lot of wearables like jewelry, like outfits, like space suits can actually help you obtain the health in space. And this research, and this was actually Neri Oxman's images that I've added here. So she has worked on these wearables which are 3D printed, but they also can have different LJ, or you can say different nutrients or minerals within their outfits. And her research talks about different planets, because each one of these suits are for a different planet. And that's one approach to think about. So it's not just the moon. Someone was telling me yesterday that we're thinking about moon, but why can you not just think about other planets beyond moon, right? So this is actually one good example which talks about other planets and exoplanets, and how do we build visuals and wearables or fashion pieces around that idea. Again, more, this is bone, muscle, and by the way, this helmet that you see, this is constructed, I did this collaboration in Dubai, and this was constructed using sustainable material, and by that I mean it was done with calcium powder. Calcium powder was used to make it, instead of plastic. So in a way it's recycling, in a way it's like a new material research. So I mean, we are in KAUST and they have a fabrication department, and it's interesting to think about different materials that we can use for 3D printing of like different parts for astronauts or space explorers, and how would that look like, because it doesn't have to be plastic, right? It doesn't have to be rubber or silicone. It can be like new materials that you can think about. It can be something that can go back to the earth, right? So it has to be upcycled. So this is that project that talks about living materials and light pollution. And what you see on the screen is basically, you can see the scale of it, because my sister is actually on the floor, and there's like huge data maps that I had in my studio, and the data maps were obviously the ones that I created using AI. Because for me, AI is just a starting point. It's nothing that I can say I can place this work of art in a gallery. I cannot do that. But for me, it's like a form of research. So you see 3D prints, you see data maps on the floor which were printed on different kinds of fabrics and materials. And yeah, this is the design of Firefly actually. So let me tell you a bit about it. Light pollution is a global issue. Okay, light pollution is a global issue, but how it has been, changing its form is like quite rapid. So I was looking at its effect on firefly, moth, bats, zooplanktons, and how does that shift our perspective and how we can make their life easier, because obviously like light pollution outdoor and indoor both, it's an issue if the luminosity is not right. So to address that, I was looking at its effect on different species and different parts of their exoskeleton and stuff like that. So I won't go into detail, I'll just quickly scroll through, but you can see here I'm thinking about a wearable piece that is inspired by an eye of the firefly. So the entire frontal design, these are all my sketches and these are all my 3D renders, and in the end I'm wearing the 3D printed piece that was the result of it. So I created both hybrid, like the sketch part, the 3D rendering part, and then the final piece that was exhibited, and it was also performed. So I'm just going to quickly scroll through. You can see the entire data sets. You can see how I'm just prototyping, how I'm just thinking it would fit on it, because it's something new, so there's a lot of R&D going on, right? And then we were also in the studio thinking about the light integration, and that light by the way mimicked their mating patterns because they were getting disturbed, so they signal through the light. And that's how I was thinking about the firefly performance, and how would that bring into attention the issue of firefly extinction. This is all the ideation, by the way. This is our studio where I'm constructing some bits with different kinds of materials, with data sets. You can see a firefly wing that I did using like thousands of images of firefly wings, and they were overlapped to create this beautiful wearable skirt, you can say. Yeah, so more mannequins, more ideation with the team. Just quickly going through. See, this is moth, and moth, its movement gets disturbed because it follows the moon, and if we have the wrong lights, then it gets confused, right? So this was inspired by that idea. Collecting a lot of data, turning them into 3D prints. I'll just quickly go through. A lot of ideation going on. This is me just doing all the light work. The masks inspired by the moth. We coming up with the original compositions because it's an idea that we were having a hard time finding the references. This was inspired by the way zooplanktons and their microscopic structures, and turning that into a 3D printed structure because we wanted to make the idea visible. And bat too. So this is inspired by bat. And this was the final performance. So you can see all the characters here. They performed as those species which were affected by light. So in the night and in the gallery. This is with the team, and this was with, by the way, Cosmic Tribe and Rayan, who did the research part of it, research coordination. Some displays. So these are the videos. I'll skip it. So another just quick. Okay, wait. What's happening? Okay, it's gone. So this is another project, Terra suit, which talks about a suit that is both functional, both it talks about the innovative side of it, and also thermal regulation. Because when we think about suits, then it has to be culturally, for me it has to have the identity, but it also has to have some functional side of it. So this was another project, and it talks about the adaptive resilience as well. And JWST, I already hinted at it. So yeah, we just have to think about what will delight humans in space. It's such a curious question. We can all have like different answers to it. Some more creative designs I've added, like process of other scientists. We've gone through some of it with Dr. Tara Dudley and James Gill. So a lot of research that I usually do or I look at while I'm designing, this is all of that, by the way. Electrospun materials, sensor nets and microbots. By the way, I'm happy to share this presentation if you want to have any reference of it. So concepts of hybrid suit is something that I'm exploring. Smart clothing and fixtures is something, I think it has a lot of potential with the kind of designs that I'm coming up with. And if I find more technical people around me, maybe we can build something like that. But sensors and obviously dunes is something I'm inspired by. Space installations is another important and interesting topic because the light behaves differently in space, sound behaves differently in space, and we can create a lot of installations in space that can be very innovative and fun. Some of the other projects that went into space I just wanted to add for inspiration. Around solar system, around like just in the air. So this was like I think mummy piece. A color palette by Damien Hirst that also went into space. Some installations which were floating in their own times. So yeah, I mean I just wanted to also add our metaverse because this was built entirely on 3D renders and structures, and that exists for people like you guys to come and collaborate and talk about such ideas, because you saw what the potential of science coming together with technology, with art is. And yeah, like I've added Dr. Tara here because I did a custom suit for her. This is like 2 years back when I was just ideating, and we did like a quick study. And obviously thank you to all the collaborators because it's always a teamwork. Spaceomics, Ice Cubes applications, and all the other collaborators, because we did the cube, and these things mean nothing if teamwork is not there. So yeah, really thankful to having such a team, and Project Mallet obviously is something that inspired me and it kept me going. So I just wanted to add that. And obviously some of the works are already there in the metaverse, and I hope that we can change these images, by the way. So they've been there for a while. But yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Okay, so when it comes to